It's about how you approach each game. I mean, in order to remain relevant, you got to win. You got to be successful. I mean, trying is one thing, but doing, that's the most important thing. And I think our guys understand that. This is an important game, mostly as I like to tell you guys, because the one we're about to play. But, it is. It's a big game.
What time is it? What time is it? What time is it? Right now!
Welcome to Talkin' About Sports, the Carolina's #1 podcast. We're here at the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. An all-star panel, as always, joins us from Penn State, the Carolina Panthers ESPN, Reggie Walker, the coach. We love having Coach Davis with us, and Jeff Taylor, JT, in from TNN Motorsports Channel 46 and WBTV. And we just heard from Ron Rivera, Reggie Walker, a conference. A lot of things are riding on this game tonight with the Eagles and Panthers. Both teams are only one loss. This could go a long way for the playoffs, if we can even say the playoffs this early in the season.
Yeah, I think the big thing here, the reason why everyone's looking at this as such a big game, especially in my opinion for the Panthers, is because in addition to the fact that the teams are 4-1, this is that short week, a little bit of a different set of preparation, and the Panthers are at home. So they have a slight advantage because they were actually able to probably do somewhat of a full walkthrough yesterday before the game on Thursday, because there's no travel. So when you look at what this team is faced with, 2 4-1 teams, Panthers 2 big road wins as well. That's the big key. You're coming off 2 road wins. You don't want to give away that momentum by losing a game at home, especially with an opponent coming in. Again, both teams on a short week, but your opponent is traveling on a short week, so you don't want to give it away.
Coach Davis, you played in the NFL. You were a receiver with Jeff Taylor's Houston Oilers.
Yes.
Did you ever have short weeks? You had Monday Night Football.
Yes.
Back then. So I mean, you dealt with short weeks, but not so much the Sunday to a Thursday. And by the way, Cam looked great against New England and Detroit.
Right.
But what do you work on in the short week, and how do you I guess you're not going to go full out because guys have to rest from the previous week.
Well, a lot of it now is just preparation. A lot of meetings, a lot of film, notebook work. But now it's just about who's healthy.
Right.
And when we look into healthy, those bumps and bruises, you got to realize the Panthers have won 2 tough games on the road, meaning the Patriots and Detroit.
Very physical games.
Very, very physical games that they won. And I think that's going to give the edge to the Panthers this Sunday because of the battle-tested 2 weeks that they've had. I think personally that the Eagles have had a very easy schedule, if you could say that in the NFL. I think the Eagles have had it easier.
That was a tough game.
Yeah, they had the Chargers, Cardinals, Redskins, and Giants. You could sum up all 5 of those games in the 2 weeks the Panthers have had here playing against the Patriots and the Lions on the road.
And, Jeff, we're looking at this injury list and the schedule, not soft like yogurt, like Cam Newton doesn't have to enjoy anymore because he got waived for Dak Prescott due to his comments regarding Carolina beat reporter. But look at this injury list. Ryan Khalil, Kirk Coleman, Demetrius Cox, Greg Olsen. These are all out. In, but still limited in practice. James Bradbury, Darrell Worley. You're starting corners. And Devin Funchess, a guy who really came up big last week. So I don't know what Carolina's really got to step up because they do have a lot of time off after this game.
The one game they lost was to New Orleans, and Drew Brees kind of went off that game. So having your corners in that kind of injury-prone, that can make it a little interesting against Carson Wentz because he's played good football this year so far. I think he's made a step, and he's kind of leading that team. So I think the corners, that's an interesting deal. But Devin Funchess, if he's 100%, right now he is the receiver on that team. I think. Do
you have anything on his route running?
I don't have anything on his route running. I know nothing about routes.
Careful, big fella.
But like Reggie said a couple weeks ago on the show or whatever, you mentioned Devin Funchess was going to have a year.
Yeah.
And so far he has been the man. And I think that's something. And one more thing, Cam, they won at New England. And really, that was Cam's 4th game. Mm-hmm. So really, if you think about it, he didn't get any preseason. I think he's, last week was really, if you think about it, week 1 of his regular season going against Detroit. So I can't wait to see where he goes from here because I could see him lighten some things up here as he's healthy. He's got confidence in his throws. Who knows?
Yep. And one thing about the route running of these receivers, especially Benjamin and Funchess, they're so big. It's all about getting their body between the ball and the defender. It's not necessarily precise route running because they're so big. It's about using their bodies to their advantage.
Coach, I was going to say this. Now that seems to be the norm, but you have Funchess and Kelvin Benjamin. I remember a guy like Harold Carmichael back in the old Philadelphia Eagles with Roman Gabriel. This guy was like 6'8" back in the 70s, and he was a guy that was always open.
Yeah. Well, let me respond to that. We talk about the size. It's weird you say that because he was an anomaly in the NFL.
Yeah.
My rookie year in Houston, me and Hayward Jeffries were rookies, and both of us were 6'3". We walked out to the practice field the first day. Every receiver out there was 5'7".
Mm-hmm. Ernest Gibbons,
Drew Hill, Willie Drury, and Warren Moon.
I can talk Oilers all day.
Yeah, because Warren Moon loved it because now he had targets to throw to instead of areas. He had a huge offensive line with Munchak, Maggs, and those guys, and Steinkooler. So now he wasn't throwing to areas. He was throwing to actual bodies now.
And to add to that, as a former defensive back, I'm going to tell you right now, when a guy can basically, when you can play perfect technique and a guy can just go over the top of you and take the football, that's a lonely feeling because you just look at your coach and you go, what else am I supposed to do? And sometimes your coach just looks at you and says, we just tip our cap. The guy made a play. And
conversely, Reggie, look at Christian McCaffrey. He leads NFL in rookies. And, look at McCaffrey. He had his first TD against Detroit. He's got 27 receptions, 237 yards. And maybe in addition to Funchess coming into his own a little bit, maybe McCaffrey's starting to feel not so much like a rookie, but as a guy who's really making plays and exploiting his mismatches.
He is, and he's going to be matched up on linebackers the majority of the time, which he should win that battle every time he runs a route. But I'd like to see him be utilized a little bit more downfield.
Yeah.
I know McCaffrey comes out of backfield and do a good job, but I'd like to see him be utilized like on more wheel routes or maybe sending that back up to seam because right now with Olsen out, now Dixon did a great job.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
Boy, where did Ed come from?
They're head coaches in the NFL for a reason. They're smart and they're coordinators. They're going to stop some of that stuff going to Dixon, and now McCaffrey's going to have to come up even bigger.
Now, Coach, to your point, they're head coaches for a reason. But one thing coaches cannot control is injuries. The Eagles are going to play without right tackle Lane Johnson. I think there's something like 2-8 when he doesn't play. That's a backup against the veteran in Julius Peppers, who has 5.5 sacks already on the season. I think that's going to be the key matchup in this game. Now, the thing that helps the Eagles with that is that's the front side for Carson Wentz as a right-handed quarterback.
Right.
So he'll be able to see that coming. But at the same time, if they're not able to shore up that side of the field, shore up that edge against the veteran in Peppers, it could be a long night for the Philadelphia Eagles.
And totally agree. So I think it's going to be important for Peppers coming off the end. He's going to make Wentz step up into the pocket now, hopefully, and that middle pressure has to come up big.
This is the point of the show where I blame William Wilson for walking in with looking, styling, and profile because he blows out the lights every week. But we can't blame Will. He's doing some awards ceremony somewhere in Hollywood. So, but Jeff Taylor, what do you think about? This is a matchup of one-loss or four-win teams, if you will. Carolina, Philadelphia. Later in the season, Carolina plays Green Bay right here. So, I mean, the road to the NFC Championship may come through Charlotte in some form or fashion.
And who would have thought that after last season? Who would have thought it as we got to this season that we'd be 4-1 where we are right now with them as playing as good as they are? I mean, well-rounded and well-balanced. I don't know that there's really a more well-balanced NFC team.
I don't think they're that balanced. I don't think they're running the ball enough. Jonathan Stewart is a step slow. The line is not executing their blocks. I think Cam is 75% on first downs throwing the ball, but the running game is not where it needs to be.
I buy that, but I will say this. If you look at what this team has done, you got 4 different guys with at least 10 receptions. That tells me there's some balance in the passing game. But to your point, Kev, I think they got to run the football a little bit more.
Yeah, they're only averaging about 98 yards on the ground this year, which is not going to get it because, like I said, teams are smart. They make adjustments. The better teams make great adjustments, even during the game and most of the time on the next play. And I think the Panthers have to get better at running the football between the tackles to be successful.
And do they need to control some leads late in games as well?
Let me ask you this. Do they need to go with one or the other, though? Do you need to go with McCaffrey or do you need to go with, Jonathan Stewart? Do you have to pick one and stick with him? Because, and Reggie, being a Titans fan, are you going to go with Derrick Henry or are you going to go with, DeMarco Murray?
Well, the problem is you have to understand who your backs are.
Right.
And Stewart's the type of back, as is a guy like DeMarco Murray. Those are the type of backs that their first 5 or 7 and maybe 10 carries aren't really about those carries. It's about what happens on carry 15, 18, and 22.
When the offensive line everybody's getting tired of the D-line.
Guys are getting tired. They're feeling good about themselves. They're kind of lathered up. So that's important. And I think whoever they go with, even if it's the whole key is you've got to consistently, if it's Stewart, you got to consistently get him some carries throughout the football game
and get him going.
Build up.
Right. Yeah. And have they done that enough? Where they've stuck with one guy long enough to let that guy get going.
I'm not sure they have.
And I think
maybe that's where they need to go.
That's a great point, Jeff, because I think nowadays everything's become, especially running back, has become situational.
Right.
Whereas the greatest backs I ever knew growing up played every down of every game, but now it's situational. So that takes away from a lot of those carries and yards.
Well, Coach, before we go to a break, football, wise man once said, all you need is a seal here and a seal here,
and then you got the alley
in the alley. So football is a simple game at times.
Shout out to Merle Hodge.
Block the other guy and create a little alley and let a guy like Jonathan Stewart run the damn ball.
Merle Hodge, baby.
Right, here we go. We're here at the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. This is Talking About Sports.
Hodgie, baby. Get Merrill in there.
That's Vince Lombardi.
We're talking about sports on
We're talking about sports at ADS. I don't know how to say that.
We're talking about
sports in, oh God, I forgot.
ADSN.
What is it?
ADSN.
ADSN, okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about sports.
Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports.
Talking sports. Talking about sports. We're talking about sports on ADSN.
Talking about sports on ADSN.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. Coach Davis, Jeff Taylor, Reggie Walker, I'm Kevin Casey. And keys to the game, let's go down the line. Reg, what are your keys for the game, Eagles and Panthers?
I think the big keys, I mentioned earlier, the Peppers matchup against the right tackle for the Eagles, I think is one. And basically, let's just call it that defensive front, because if Peppers is winning that matchup, you would think Carson Wentz is going to have to step forward in the pocket. So those inside pass rushers in K'Wan Short, Starlo Tulele, those guys are going to have to be key for the Panthers.
And I think the key is the war of attrition between the Panthers defense being ranked 6th in the league and the Eagles offense being ranked 3rd. I think the Eagles have a great balance of run pass. Wentz is throwing the ball very, very well now. But I think the Panthers defense, the defensive backs are going to be tested. But again, like Reggie said, the pass rush is going to be key to relieve some of that pressure on the DBs to play coverage for more than 3 seconds.
I'm going to go with the Panthers getting out of the gate fast. Home field. You've got 2 great wins against the Patriots and the Lions. Get out quick tonight. Get the crowd in it. And, a home game and with a lot, down the road playoff-wise, get out of the gate quick. Get that crowd into it and take advantage of those 2 road wins.
There's a reason this team has only lost one, and that was to the undefeated team. That's Kansas City. They know how. There's something about Carson Wentz. He can escape. He feels the pressure. The line has done well at times. He is missing the right tackle tonight. And Carolina, I think, is doing the right thing by bringing Peppers off the bench, spelling him, and saving him for the second half. Mario Addison's having a good year. Charles Johnson is always there. I like this defensive front. I like the rotation. But Philadelphia's a good ball club. And they have Jeff Taylor, former Gamecock, and Alshon Jeffries. He's a big guy. He could present some matchup problems for the Carolina secondary.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But I would be worried more about Zach Erb at tight end.
Yeah.
Because not only is he being a good check down receiver, he's a primary receiver in a lot of their offense, which is a safety blanket for Wentz. So I would be concerned about that tight end position even more so than what they're doing outside with the wide receivers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the main reason why is because when you've got a tight end that's that effective, you've got to make a decision. Is Shaq Thompson and TD good enough to handle him one-on-one, or do you have to play him with a safety? If you have to play him with a safety, now that opens up and creates more for a guy like Alshon Jeffrey. So I think you're going to have to really be strategic about how you deal with Ertz and whether or not you can handle Ertz in a one-on-one situation with a linebacker or maybe even a safety. Because if it's a safety, now it puts you in a bind, or you might have to play some more nickel.
Agreed. I think that Alshon Jeffries, it'll be interesting to see with our corners hurt and stuff. how often he goes in. I think going to be that front four, though, getting pressure on Carson Wentz. If that front four can get to him, get him rattled, keep him contained, don't let him get outside, I think they can handle it.
That's one of the things, Jeff, that other teams, the Redskins really got to him, and they have a really good pass rush. But the thing was, he would slip out of containment.
Right.
And he's not the guy, he'll run to a first down and get down or get out of bounds. He won't run just to run.
Right.
He slips, gets out, and makes a play, extends the play. I just think that Carolina has to contain, and a guy like Shaq Thompson could be the key if he's going to the quote spy that's not going to be dedicated to pass coverage or to a back. But a guy like Zach Ertz could be the guy because he's fast enough and has the size that could be covering the tight end.
Yeah, and I think to the Panthers' advantage, again, these last 2 weeks, when you go against Tom Brady and Stafford.
And Gronk.
And
Ebron.
And Ebron.
You're battle tested against those two guys. You can't go against anybody better than escaping a rush, making precise throws, and things like that. So I think the Panthers, they should come in the game with a little confidence as far as how to deal with Wentz after these past 2 weeks.
All right, Reggie, down the line, let's go predictions.
Carolina Panthers 20, Philadelphia Eagles 14.
I'm going to say, man, I have to give an A and a B. I think if the game is played below 40 points total, the Panthers will win. Anything over 40, I think Philadelphia wins because they can score.
I like that. I like that concept.
I'm going to go right at the 40. I'm going to go 27-13 Panthers. I'm going to stick it right at that 40. I think the defense steps up and plays some ball tonight, and I think they get after Carson Wentz.
I could use a 40 right about now. I like to have a little Mickey's Big Mouth right now. I like to have a little Mickey's 40 right now.
You been hanging out with Shannon Sharp?
No, I'm not saying, man. I'm just saying I used to like Mickey's back in the day.
Black and some yak.
Pink champagne back in the day.
Pink champagne.
So there you go. Some Carolina players making some strides in the league. How about Mitch Trubisky? I think he looked good. Deshaun Watson has looked good from Clemson, and Mitch Trubisky from his doing a lot better than the Tar Heels these days. JT, what do you think?
You listen, Deshaun Watson, I've been impressed with him. I think Houston's finally found their quarterback. As much as I'm a Titans fan and what they did to us, God bless him. I think he's done great. Yeah, Mitch Trubisky, I thought he looked good. I mean, he seemed solid. He seemed confident, and just let him play now. Chicago's got to let him play. But if we're talking about Carolina and South Carolina, North Carolina, I'm going to go with Ryan Suckup from the Tennessee Titans, leading the NFL in scoring. How about that?
Gotta love kickers.
I am. Well, I'm a kicker too, so I was.
That's why I said
in college. So I'm gonna go with God bless Ryan Suckup. He's had a. That's a weapon, man.
I think the quarterback situation, especially with the rookies, the ACC is proving themselves as a conference of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
People talk about the NC State quarterbacks, Wilson, Phillip Rivers, Glennon, and Brissett, Jacoby Brissett. Those are all NC State quarterbacks, but I think the ACC is coming into its own as far as being a great conference for quarterbacks on the next level.
Absolutely.
Brad Kaya, the third-string guy at Carolina, is an ACC guy.
People talk about winning games and stuff, and Alabama, but their quarterbacks, they don't translate into the league a lot of times for whatever reasons. Could be systematic or whatever.
Well, they do for the Redskins this year.
But Trubisky has to be the man. If I would, John Fox is probably going to get fired. New coach coming in has to, from day one.
It is what it is.
Let Trubisky take this team and run with it.
Well, here's what I'll say about that, and I said it before the season. They not winning a championship with Mitch, Mike Glennon, the second coming of the Messiah, or anybody else. That team is not good enough. But if you're going to decide to put this kid in the ball game, which I have no problem with, I personally think he wasn't ready. I didn't think at the beginning of the season he was ready to start. I didn't think he had enough snaps at North Carolina. But if you're going to play this kid, you got to play him through the growing pains. If he goes out and has a 5 or 6 interception game, you can't bench this kid. You have to accept.
Put him right back on the bike. Put him right back on the bike.
People forget the most interceptions thrown in a season by a rookie. Peyton
Manning. Yep.
It's it's part of the game.
Oh, yeah.
Let this kid play football. If you're gonna go with him, you got to let him learn from his mistakes. You can't, because listen, I'd say it till I'm blue in the face. Most people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm not saying he would have been a great player, but the San Diego Chargers absolutely mishandled Ryan Leaf. You can say what you want about how bad he was. They mishandled him. They decided to put him in a game when Harbaugh was hurt. Then he throws a pick, and Harbaugh's healthy again, so they take him out. And all this yo-yo. That's not how you handle a young quarterback. They have to learn from their mistakes and trust that they're the guy. The Bears, as a collective, are not great. But if you're going to ride with Mitch Trubisky, let him ride with a lack of resources and let him figure it out with a lack of resources.
And from an ownership GM standpoint, if I'm going to ride with him, I'm going to spend an awful lot of money on the offensive line.
Yes.
I know position players come a dime a dozen, but I would invest greatly on an offensive line to protect my investment at the quarterback if they stay with Trubisky. Exactly. Totally agree.
Ask David Carr.
Well, I mean, Deshaun Watson looks like his left tackle's holding out, and he's doing. Maybe that's why he's running a lot. But I mean, he's done. I like Deshaun Watson. JT, I think he's got it going on. And Houston really needs it with J.J. Watt going down for the season. But he's got good targets in John Gray Hopkins and a couple other guys down there in Houston.
Deshaun Watson was a 4-year starter.
Absolutely.
That young man has had.
And he's played on the biggest stage twice.
He's had a lot of snaps
in
big games. And this is a team that, to your point, they played in the college football national championship game, college football playoff national championship game, 2 consecutive years.
And
which means
both.
He got an additional 3 games.
Right.
He played, when you think about his career, you're talking about upwards of 55 games of upwards of 50 to 60 snaps.
Right.
That's a lot of snaps. That's a lot of chance to learn. Mitch Trubisky was a year and a half kind of starter, and now he's in the NFL.
Right.
That's not a lot of snaps. So that's why I tend to think that Deshaun Watson is going to play a little bit better because of that notion that he's had that many more opportunities to be under center.
Well, I guess also, Hugh Jackson is not going to take that lead. He's benched Deshaun Kaiser, and he's going to go with Kevin Hogan, who you better hope is Hulk Hogan, or else he's going to be looking for a job. And during tonight's game, the Panthers will don a special 51 helmet to honor the late Sam Mills, who passed away from cancer in 2005. Mills was a linebacker and coach with the organization and was the inspiration behind the team slogan, "Keep Pounding."
We're no longer a relatively new franchise. We've got history, and Sam Mills was such an integral part of this history, the development of this football team, the development of this culture here, the reasoning behind keep pounding. And for us to introduce it to our players, especially our new players, our young players, and for them to get okay, I understand why. That keep pounding is stitched into everybody's collar so that every time they put their jersey on, they see it. It means something. It has relevance now.
What does keep pounding mean for the Panthers, and how they're going to move forward with this? Start with you, JT, and let's go down the line.
In reference to Sam Mills, I think when we talk about keep pounding, his play on the field was exactly how he fought the cancer that he had. And I think that is an inspiration. I think every time the Panthers step on the field or they don those jerseys that say keep pounding, it all reverts back to Sam and what he meant on the field and how he stood up and fought the battle he fought.
Totally agree. And one thing, people kind of, because he was a great player on the field, underestimate his leadership ability in the locker room. And I think that's huge for what Carolina Panthers stand for, even today. But Jeff is totally right on the aspects of on and off the field. His play on the field exemplified going hard every play, high motor, not taking a play off, and then off the field dealing with his disease. He wasn't going to let it conquer him the way it wanted to.
Right.
And he just literally kept pounding until he succumbed to it. But excellent human being on and off the field, dealing with the things he had to deal with.
And for me, I always look at, when I think about people like Sam Mills, I always look at what they left behind. His son Marcus was my teammate in college at Penn State. I'll tell you right now, that's one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. And I would give anything to him if he asked for it. And I think that is just the complete reason why his father is so revered, is because he created a young man like that and turned him into the man that he is. So shout out to Marcus, and I know of his greatness because he got it from his father. And that, to me, is the epitome of what somebody can leave behind, is when you see great people in the humans that they created and left behind for us.
And the NFL Network will do a special Football Life on Sam Mills that'll air Friday night. Thanks for watching this week's Panther pregame update on ADSN. Now you can find us on iTunes and SoundCloud For all you fans who just want to listen while you drive, and you can tweet your favorite sports topics to us at We Talkin' Sports 1, and your questions could be featured on the next Talkin' About Sports. For Reggie Walker, Coach Davis, Jeff Taylor, I'm Kevin Casey with Talkin' About Sports. Enjoy the game and keep pounding.
I do get frustrated. I want our guys to be perfect, and I want to put them in a position where they can be perfect. Understanding that we'll never get that, but what we're seeing right now is, just a whole multitude of issues that we've got to get cleaned up. And the frustrating thing is that, we're making some of the same mistakes over and over. Not necessarily in the words coming out of my mouth going to the signal guide, but we'll be much more involved in when we are in between series and those kind of things, and what I would like to try to do. So that, I don't know that will be the answer, but it's something that I feel like, that's where I can help the most, and so that's where I'm going to be.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. Kevin Casey along with Coach Davis, Jeff Taylor, and Reggie Walker. We just heard from Larry Fedora. He looks like a man who's frustrated. He looks like a guy who's only won one game, and that was against Old Dominion. I've seen them 3 times in person. To me, offensively, they're not bad, but defensively, they're just not stopping guys at the right time. So what ails the Tar Heels, Jeff Taylor?
I think offense-wise, Austin Prohl, who played at Providence High School here in Charlotte. He was
out for the year.
Yeah, he was having a pretty good early season. I mean, they were getting the ball to him, and he's got some explosive speed and some great hands. And my son played with him at Providence, and I just know that losing that receiver, I think, kind of stunted the growth of that offense a little bit. Defensive wise, they're not getting pressure on. I don't know. They're not getting pressure from the defensive line, as far as I can tell. And but I think it's more of losing one of those key players on offense can really throw a wrench in it.
Well, you have to look. We talked about it in the pro section at quarterback. It starts there a lot of times, and he's young, and they are rebuilding on offense. You talked about the injury to Prohl, but with Surratt at quarterback, a Lincoln guy, he's completing 58% of his passes, which isn't bad.
I don't think he's the problem, Coach. I know you got to take growing pains. I think he's a good guy, and he's a building block. Mm-hmm. But like Reggie is saying, you get the guy in there, you stick with him. You don't jerk him around like a yo-yo.
Right, and I don't think they will. I think he's going to be their guy for the next 3 years or however long he stays. But now it turns into recruiting. You got to look for the future. Yeah, you want to get better this year as games come and go. But then again, now Fedora has to look to recruiting as one of the biggest issues that he's going to have to deal with as far as the
But think about this, Coach. As we tape here, the NCAA is going to come down on the North Carolina Tar Heel program. I think short of the death penalty, they're going to get hit hard. They're going to have the book thrown at them. And I think there's going to be massive sanctions and penalties, and that could hamper recruiting for the future.
Well, back to now. I think the first thing they got to do, listen, Jordan Brown and Michael Carter, you got to hand them the football more. They're both averaging more than 4.5 yards a carry. You got a young quarterback. If you can't run the football,
are those guys average, or is the offensive line average?
Well, the bottom line is you got to fix the running game, because you're right. The offensive line is not great, and that's where your problem is. Because if you can run the football and create a situation where you can do a little more play action passing, you can do a little situation where you get more guys in the box, so you can take some shots downfield and get some one-on-one situations. With all due respect to Prohl, it doesn't matter who's playing wide receiver, because percentages say you'll hit some of them. So that's part of the problem. And then the other problem is, obviously, again, as we talked about, youth at quarterback. But I think more than anything, they have to get off to better starts. I haven't looked at what they're doing at the start of games in terms of winning the coin toss, but they need to find a way to get themselves ahead in some ball games. That usually helps your defense, because if you're ahead, teams have to throw the football against you. They have to be a little bit more predictable offensively, and it can help a defense. Right now, they're not able to do that. And when you're playing from behind all the time, you got to pitch it around the yard with a young quarterback. That's not the best way to win games.
He's their leading rusher, and that's not good. And Reggie, you said all along, Why is the defense so bad? Well, Gene Chizik's not there, I don't think.
Well, that's part of it. No, he's not there.
He's a good coordinator.
I mean,
very good coordinator.
Coach, I just don't know what it's. I don't think it's going to get. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. With
it will, and Tar Heels are going to have to swallow that pill. And you know, me as an offensive guy, I would look actually into changing up the scheme of the offense.
Simplify.
Are you for the execution of the offense, Coach?
I'm all for it. But you got to realize with the type of quarterback that you have, I would go into more of a spread offense, putting them on the end to throw the ball some and things like that. But you're right.
What are you going to bring in Warren Moon to be running coordinator?
I think Coach Fedora has to swallow this pill and say to administration and the Tar Heel fans, we're not going to be good after these supposed allegations, sanctions come down. But then again,
he had nothing to do with them, and some of these people are, I think, unreasonable. I think they've been sipping too much Chardonnay in Chapel Hill. They're going to blame him for being 1-5 this year. Not to mention sanctions coming on. They have to be patient, but I don't think they are.
No, I don't think they're very. I'm not going to say not football knowledgeable, but not like the Alabama Clemson fan. But they're going to have to take it and deal with it.
But I remember Reggie and I. We had a show where we talked about the conversation of as administration.
Yes.
Where are you going with football at UNC? I mean, and you talk about recruiting and how much you're going to, and now the sanctions
Granville
are coming
Towers,
out Friday.
it's the place to be at UNC.
It's like where, as a school, listen, basketball rules. So where does football fall here? And what are we looking at down the road? And if I'm a kid who's here in North Carolina, do I want to go play for that school?
Well, not only that, do you really think that every year at North Carolina you're going to win 10 games?
No.
Let's be honest here.
You'll be 8
as an
and
administration.
Now,
there are going to be times at places like North Carolina, and I know we're getting ready to talk about NC State down the street from them, and places like Duke and Wake. You're not going to be a 10-win football team every season.
Well, I mean,
yes, no one wants to be 1-5.
Well,
but they don't. North Carolina is not a place in football. With all due respect to any Tar Heel fan watching this, you are not a program that reloads every year like an Alabama or a Clemson or a USC does.
Well,
you're just not.
Well, Reggie, they're not a team that's used to being on probation like maybe Penn State used to be. But how about NC State? They're 5-1.
We've never been on probation.
Well, not when you play. Not when you played.
Yeah,
they were recently.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they should have been in other times, based on what we're hearing. But Reggie, what do you think of NC State? They're 5-1. We saw them here in the opening week. They looked very good against at the time, a good South Carolina team before the injuries hit them. I like what NC State's doing. They're playing very physical. I like their defense, and they're making plays when they have to.
This, to me, is what it actually goes back to exactly what I was talking about. When you look at a place like NC State in college football, you got Dave Doran here, who's now sort of settled in as the head coach. Some people were saying if he doesn't do it this year, it's time for him to go. Now there's discussion about an extension. Because they're making the run they should after every third or fourth year. This is not a program that every year is going to win 10, 11 games. But if every year they're around 500, it should be above 500. I will say that. They should be at least 6-6 every year. And then you look up every third or fourth year and they're winning 10 games and they're pushing to maybe play for an ACC championship. That's what this program is and can be consistently. But to think that they're going to be where a Clemson is consistently, that's not the case. Right now, the reason they're at the level that they are is they're similar to Clemson right now. The difference is their quarterback is a little bit more of a veteran. But on the flip side, they've got a defensive line that's really, really good.
Really good.
You've got difference makers up front, especially on the defensive line. You got a chance to win a lot of ball games, and that's what NC State has built right now. And that's a good job by Dave Doran behind, of course, the big fella and Chubb up front.
And I think too, NC State football has accepted who they are.
Yes.
Yep.
That's the old Dwayne The Rock Johnson. They know their role.
Yeah, they're not going to drive their car off a cliff if they win 5 games a year. But that third or fourth year, they're going to win 9 games. They're going to, maybe 10.
And Jeff, before we come back from our break, we're going to let you weigh in on the Gamecocks and Clemson Tigers. But at NC State, to use wrestling parlance, they're going back to the Chuck Amato days. They are not adverse to taking the, quote, necessary shortcuts as it comes to college athletics. This is Talking About Sports from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill.
We're talking about sports on
We're talking about sports at ADS. I don't know how to say that.
We're talking about
sports in, oh God, I forgot.
ADSN.
What is it?
ADSN.
ADSN, okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about sports.
Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports.
Talking sports. Talking about sports. We're talking about sports on ADSN.
Talking about sports on ADSN.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports. Let's talk about the South Carolina Gamecocks, Jeff Taylor. Your son goes to school there. Is he the one that doesn't have a car, or
that'd be the middle kid?
Okay,
that'd be my newest rookie driver.
So you're down from you're like Richard Petty Motorsports. You're down a ride right now.
Yeah,
so what's going on? Everybody needs a sponsor. What's going on with the Gamecocks?
They're hard to figure out. I mean, they just put a whipping on Arkansas. But here's the interesting part.
William Wilson would say it's not hard to do these days.
That's true. But here's the interesting part about South Carolina. And if you look at, they should have beat Texas A&M. I mean, they were up on them, and Texas A&M scored in the last couple of minutes to win that game. Kentucky's a good, solid football team. But what I've learned about South Carolina watching them, they've still got a lot of young kids, freshmen and sophomores playing, Jake Bentley and stuff. They don't screw up a whole lot. It ain't pretty, it ain't flashy, but they haven't screwed up a whole lot. Their three games, they won the margin turnover 3 times, and 6 of their games. 2 of them they were even, and then they had -1 against Louisiana Tech. But they don't mess up a whole lot that way, and they're the number 1 team in the nation in terms of fewest penalty yards. So they're playing disciplined football. They're not flashy. They lost Dabo Samuel, and that was a big hit. They just, once they lost him, they just need to figure out that identity. They either throw a lot or they run a lot. They just seem to not, what I'm getting at? It's hard to figure them out, but they're 4-2, and it's the same thing right now. Until you get to where it's building, and get these sophomores playing ball and stuff like that, finish 6 and whatever, get yourself to a bowl game, and if Will Muschamp can get them going in the right direction defensive-wise and get them to a bowl game this year, hey, but they're playing good ball. This is a big week for them. I think they can go into Tennessee, and I think they can get a win.
Coach, the Vols are down. A lot of people, as William Wilson would say, anybody in the phone book is a candidate to be Butch Jones' replacement. I think they're down, and when you have a team down, you don't hit them, you kick them, it's easier.
You're exactly right. Chop the head off. And I think, looking at South Carolina's schedule, they only play Georgia and Clemson, and those are rivalry games. So
they got Florida too.
Yeah, ranked teams.
Yeah, ranked teams, right.
But those 2 games are rivalry games, so that could swing either way depending on which way the wind's blowing sometime. And you got to realize that Tennessee, their schedule helps them because they only have Alabama as a ranked team that they have to play. But University of Kentucky is playing very well also.
They are.
Know that.
I'm very high on Kentucky football.
Kentucky's playing well, but I think the Gamecocks will pull it off against Tennessee in a big way.
Are they looking for a new coach in Tennessee come Monday if South Carolina wins?
Here's what I will say.
Without a doubt.
Probably. But if Butch Jones finds a way to win this game, because, he's building that program brick by brick.
I like Butch Jones. I don't think they should get rid of the guy.
Here's what I'll say. Think about this, because folks down
they're like
in South
Nebraska
Carolina,
fans. They're unrealistic.
Folks down in South Carolina have been, I don't want to call them impatient with Muschamp.
Oh, they have.
But they want a faster fix.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you right now, this game to me, whoever loses this game as a coach, because both programs have marked this game as winnable.
Right.
On their schedule. For Tennessee, we talked about it. They still got to deal with Alabama. No one expects them to win that game. Most people probably don't expect them to beat LSU. If they win the rest, Butch is okay because he's 8-4.
Right, and he goes to a bowl game.
And does he find himself at 7-5? And on the flip side, same thing for Muschamp. Does he lose this game and then it spirals out of control? And if that's the case, it's going to get real warm down in Columbia.
I'll take Butch Jones over Muschamp any day. Now, conversely, a guy who with no worries of any job security is Dabo Swinney. Clemson and Syracuse, that's a Friday night game. JT, what do you think of? I think Clemson's doing everything that they've set out to do. I like what they're doing. I think they have the 1A or 2 in terms of best defense in the country.
I'll make a bold prediction right now. I think they're locked in with what they're doing. That Dabo's got them rolling. They're focused.
You're really going out on a limb.
I don't think they lose another game. I think they win the national championship, and I don't think they lose another game.
I'll go out on a limb.
That's going out on a limb.
Is that a limb? I mean, I don't know if that's really a limb.
I'll go out on a limb.
That's a twig right there.
With this Friday night game. The Clemson Tigers will be over 9 sacks in this ball game.
And over 60 points.
Dino Babers, the head coach at Syracuse, came out earlier this week and said the defensive line is, quote, OMG. And the Syracuse offensive line is TRASH. It's going to get ugly on Friday night.
A lot of confidence from the coach, huh? I mean, Coach Davis,
yes.
you ever talk to your guys this way in either in basketball or football? I mean, you're basically putting your own guys down. What about coaching them up?
Yep. I always use the philosophy in coaching that I played up the other team a lot of times.
Which is what Babers is doing.
And I never ever talk poorly about my team, especially in public.
Right.
Individually,
you're not going to Lou Holt your own guy.
Oh, no. Believe me, I had some Bobby Knight tirades in locker rooms sometimes against players, but I never did it publicly.
You didn't throw any
but I
chairs?
always, no matter what I said to the players negatively, I always ended on a positive. So that was the last thing they heard from their coach and their leader, that we always have a shot to win.
And Babers didn't disparage his own team. He just said that defensive line was OMG.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the Syracuse offensive line is TRASH. I'm making that statement.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just Clemson is that much bigger, faster, and stronger than any and everybody in the college football.
But other than that,
world.
they're even.
And oh, by the way,
Other than
Christian
that-
Wilkins, he's a Northeast kid. If you think folks aren't, remember, it's still warm right now, ironically, in the Northeast.
I don't mind that, by the way.
It's still warm here.
Right. So if you think Christian Wilkins isn't going to have, maybe 30, 40, 50 of his closest family and friends in that Carrier Dome to watch him ball out,
Right.
and he's not going to try to show out, you've lost your mind. And look out for that kid this year.
All right, now we have Duke and Florida State. I'm working that game Saturday. I've seen Duke a couple of times. I've seen Florida State at Wake Forest. Florida State, outside of the quarterback position, I think has as good athletes as anyone else in the conference. And I think Blackman, their quarterback, is starting to come on into his own. He's not Dante Francois by any means, but I think he's good enough. And if he's a game manager with the talent around him, Florida State could win 8-9 games.
Yeah, I totally agree. But right now, Florida State is very fragile mentally.
That means they have to win out.
They're
they have 3
mentally
losses
not
right
tough, man. And that should be worrisome for Jimbo Fisher, having a team like this who's not mentally tough. They get pushed around a lot, and to lose that game in the final minutes against Miami just shows how vulnerable they are, not only physically but mentally, and that's not a good look for Florida State.
Well, I think, go ahead. I think that the piece of it for that particular game with Florida State is those guys, they grew up against those guys at Miami. So that was a little bit more of a, I'm not sure they believe they could win without their guy at the quarterback position, because they knew the kind of athletes that Miami has. But I think on the flip side, I think in this particular ball game, they probably feel like they have better athletes than Duke. They probably feel like they can fly around. I expect this to be a low-scoring game, and I'm going to say it this way. Whichever defense creates a turnover early in the fourth quarter is going to be the team that wins this ball game.
I was going to say, to me, that the beginning of the game is going to be interesting. But I think, listen, I love Coach Cutcliffe, and he's going to have those guys ready to play ball.
Yes, he
and
is.
if they can get in FSU's head, like you said, FSU, sure, they have better athletes. No question about it. But, when you talk about the mentality of the game and stuff, that Duke team will be prepared. They're going to play their football game. And I think, like you said, it could come down to a turnover. But if they can get in their heads early, who knows?
I like, coach special teams. I like Austin Parker from nearby Mount Pleasant High School, teammate of my son's. I really like him as a good punter. He could possibly pin Florida State in some tricky positions and maybe hit a field goal, maybe inside of 45 yards. Reggie's been high on Duke's defense, particularly their secondary all season. I can just tell you from seeing Duke in person a couple times, they got to shore up the offensive line, because if they don't, it's going to be a long day, because Florida State's got a very good defensive line.
Absolutely. Those boys down there in Tallahassee, they know how to get after the quarterback. So Duke's going to have to make sure they get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly.
What about the Heisman Trophy? I think it's Lamar Jackson's to lose. He's the incumbent. He's the champion. To be the man, you got to beat the man, as a wise man once said. I do like your guy, Reggie, from Penn State. So where do you weigh in? I'm sure you're going to maybe extol the virtues of your running back.
Right now, for me, and I don't get into wins and losses as much until you get to more than 3 losses.
I'm looking at stats.
If anybody's got a problem with that, then I give him Exhibit A, Tim Tebow. He lost 4 games a year. He won the Heisman. So I don't want to hear that garbage. I like Barkley. For me right now, he's probably number 2. But the guy I got coming on right now, making a put, Bryce Love out of Stanford. On pace right now. He's got over 1,200 yards. He's on pace right now to potentially break Barry Sanders' record for most rushing yards in a season. Listen, if you pull that off, son, hook him up. I know Byron Hanspar was a Heisman finalist years ago at Texas Tech with 2,000 yards. Larry Johnson was a Heisman finalist at Penn State in 2002 when he ran for over 2,000 yards. So if Bryce Love continues on this pace, we're going to see him over 2,000 yards, and we'll definitely see him in New York.
But, Coach, they play on the West Coast. Are the East Coast voters going to see a guy who plays in the Pac-12?
Everybody sees 2,000 yards.
Yeah, but not where a guy like Lamar Jackson and your guy from Penn State are doing it on the Eastern time zone, and everyone's seeing it. They're making SportsCenter at 11 o'clock every week, every night.
Well, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit and put some local guys in the spotlight. Riley Ferguson at Memphis. is having a wonderful year.
Yes, sir.
At quarterback, you know.
He's balling it. He is.
Being a local guy. And also Randolph at Oklahoma State's putting up big numbers also. Even though they may not get the publicity because their teams are not as good. You know, Memphis, you know, I'm not going to say
Who's
plays
Memphis
on a lower
State
scale.
play? They play like what? Hampton-Sydney, Brevard, Alabama, Birmingham, South Alabama.
That's what
those guys
that
are job
was the
guys.
Memphis State schedule.
Memphis State.
The University of Memphis schedule includes the South Florida Bulls,
Yep.
the Central Florida Knights,
Cincinnati.
Yep. UConn.
Yep.
You know, it's a little bit better. Don't sleep on the American.
Yeah,
it's some pretty good athletes in that league.
And I think because of that, you know, like, you know, with Kevin pointing that stuff out, sometimes they're overlooked for whatever reasons. But the local guys are putting up big numbers at the collegiate level, and that's always good to see.
I always think flashy when I think Heisman. I just always have. And to me, you know, Barkley at Penn State, I just watch him. I'm like, really? Wow.
I'll tell you.
Wow.
I watch Penn State games every week.
I'm
at
sure
a
you do.
location here in Charlotte with
You're probably on the
alumni
coach's
and fans.
headset.
And the reaction when people realized 2 weeks ago that he was going to return the opening kickoff, watching him matriculate down the field as he
Hank
broke
Stram.
free, you talk about a level of noise of 30 people that lit up an entire parking lot in a shopping center.
Going, here we go.
It was pretty incredible to watch. So that kid is definitely electric, especially for obviously the Penn State fans.
Yep.
Well, this is a Tennessee bar, so we're not going to talk. We're not going on the corner of some pool hall where they have some dice games going on to watch Penn State. You know. I'm just saying. You know, this is a respectable place. This is a respectable place. We're watching Tennessee football here at the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill.
I could go a lot of places with this, but what I'm going to say is this. On paper, this particular weekend, week essentially 7 in college football, looks bland. It looks flat. There are no games that feature two teams that are ranked facing each other. College Game Day is going to go to an FCS location at James Madison.
They're the national champs.
Everybody
of 1AA.
feels like this is the week that is irrelevant in college football. There's one of those every year, and it's usually the week where chaos starts to happen. So I would caution anybody that's a fan, especially of college football, don't ignore the games this weekend. Keep your eyes open because something's going to happen that we don't expect.
I can see that happening. Also, I'd like to put the emphasis tonight on the Panthers and Eagles game. Man, I think this could be a big swing as far as the NFC power goes. Green Bay is Green Bay. They're going to be Green Bay. But I think right now the winner of this game could make a huge statement when it comes to the power rankings in NFL.
I'm going to step away from football and hit the pavement. Dale Jr. wins at Talladega.
I was waiting for somebody to talk racing here.
Gets his final win of his career. Restrictor plate racing, 88, finds victory lane, and God bless him. He's had a good career, and he's gone through a lot, and I hope he finds it.
I hope he does too.
You didn't think I knew it.
My God.
I know. I know you did. I know you did. But yeah, good luck, Dale. Yeah. Good luck to Dale Jr. though this weekend, and I hope he gets the win at Talladega.
And Martin Truex winning here in Charlotte at the Bank of America 500. William Wilson made the jacket for him.
And his girlfriend Sherry, we're thinking about you.
I definitely think that Dale Jr. is going to be competitive on the lead lap and maybe pulling the victory. What do you think, Reg?
Speaking of Martin Truex, shout out to one of his crew members. The name escapes me now, but their house was greatly damaged by some tornadoes this past week. Everybody's okay, but it happened obviously right around the time that the race was ending. So for a crew member to get that phone call right after the jubilation of winning a race is scary, but the family's okay.
And I'll just say, hail to the Redskins. The Blackhawks are off to a good enough start, and the San Antonio Spurs are coming on strong.
Go Preds.
Watch out for the Charlotte Hornets. Malik
Go
Monk,
Preds.
squirrel hunting and everything. It's going to be a good year.
Tighten up.
Tighten up. For Coach Davis, Reggie Walker.
We are.
Kevin Tolbert, our executive producer. Jeff Taylor. I'm Kevin Casey from the Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. This is Talking About Sports.
See ya.